Democratic Alliance held its federal executive meeting over the weekend, looking towards a policy conference expected in April. So for more on that, I'm joined on the line now by Sole Matlasi, the DA's national spokesperson from our Cape Town studios. Sole, thanks for joining us on this Sunday afternoon. Let's talk a little bit about the outcomes from that executive meeting.
Good afternoon, Faith. It's actually Malatsi, not Matlatsi.
Malatsi. Apologies for that, Sole. So talk to us a little bit about that executive meeting. How did it go? What were the outcomes?
Well, it was a very fruitful federal executive meeting. It took place on Saturday at our headquarters in Eastgate, and the primary focus of the meeting was to lay down the ground and to prepare the organization internally for the two major political developments that will happen in the organization, which is the policy conference that is scheduled to take place in April and the early federal congress that will be taking place in May. You will recall that last year the Federal Council of the organization adopted a review report which recommended, amongst others, that the party should have an early elective congress, and further to that point that we should have a policy conference where the party can outline its set of policy priority areas, which will then inform the political direction that the organization takes on the major issues that affect the country going forward. So that discussion in terms of the process as we are now, the policy priorities will be taken to the respective 9 provinces of the organization so that the different structures in the party can engage and make contributions in that, and ultimately that process will culminate in a 2-day policy conference that will be held in Johannesburg.
Okay, so currently the policies that are seeking to be prioritized within the Democratic Alliance are being taken to the various provinces. Can you take us through some of those priority areas?
No, just a correction. It's not that they are taken there. We have opened up the process for inputs, obviously, into the structures. And the focus of the organization is to identify policies wherein the structures will make contribution in terms of what should our economic policy be, what should our policy for local government be, what should our approach for the economy be, so that at the end of the day we have a product that has been contributed to by the membership and the structures of the party, because it is important that any decision making in the organization has the involvement of different structures of the party, and ultimately the policy conference will then be making the final call based on the input that has been made by the different structures of the party.
Is the Democratic Alliance concerned about the happenings when it comes to, for example, Tshwane municipality now in and out of court, but also looking at retaining its power as the main opposition, especially with what happened at near the end of last year with having the DA leader Mmusi Maimane as well as the City of Joburg executive mayor Herman Mashaba resign, and just trying to hold back and retain the power in terms of speaking in unison to South Africans? Do you think that it's the DA is losing its grip there?
Look, there's no doubt that 2019 was a very tough and difficult year for the organization, primarily because we didn't get the election results that we were hoping for, and ultimately, given the departures of some of the leaders that have left the organization towards the end of last year. But even in the aftermath of that, we were still intact. We were able to move quickly to elect an interim leader, and that is why John Steenhuisen is the interim leader of the organization. And we are still the main opposition party in the country. Yes, there's been the situation that has developed in Johannesburg and in Tshwane currently. You would know very well that we are challenging the MEC of local government, Lebogang Maile's misinterpretation of his powers in the decision that he has made to basically suspend both the speakers of Tshwane and Johannesburg. We believe that he is using the wrong legal interpretation of his powers, because you need a council resolution before you take a decision about whether to suspend or not and expel a councillor. So we have regarded that as political bullying, and we are preparing a court proceedings that will challenge his decision.
And then tell me this, when it comes to the unity within the Democratic Alliance? Because as you would appreciate that during the debacle that you were having last year, and also looking at having to elect a new leader, and of course you've got the interim leader right now in the form of John Steenhuisen, there's the perception of your electorate, right? The people that at the end of the day need to have confidence in your ability to even lead or even to be a main opposition in this country. Do you think you're maintaining your ability to even woo your electorate, or even potentially new voters? Or are people simply seeing the Democratic Alliance as just another racist political party? What's your take on that?
The reality of the situation is, despite the departure of the former leader of the organization and the former mayor of Johannesburg, there were no other departures of senior leaders of the organization elsewhere within the party to indicate that there isn't any unity. In fact, we've been able to stabilize a situation in which in many other parties would have been much more severe than it is. We're able to move very swiftly to convene a federal council that was able to elect the interim leader of the party, and we've moved to deal with some of the issues that go to the root of what caused some of the problems that we had last year. And that is why the first order of business for this year, even for the federal executive, was the meeting over the weekend in making sure that we are putting the basic infrastructure in place to lead us towards the policy conference, so that we can resolve the question around some of the key policy questions that the electorate asked of the organization in the lead up to last year's election. And further to that, to deal with the issue of the leadership question, because Federal Congress is the only platform where you can elect permanent leaders in the organization. But because we had an extraordinary development wherein we had to elect an interim leader, the party and the structures of the party agreed that an early election Congress would be key in settling that. And in all fairness, since those developments, there hasn't been any indication whatsoever that unity in the organization and the sense of working together in order to bring the party on the course of growth, particularly given that we've got an important election in 2021 in the form of the local government elections.
Solly, I think that in 2021 will be the telling time in terms of exactly what do voters think of the Democratic Alliance, what are its perceptions of it, irrespective of whether or not you're able to put in interim leaders, take out leaders, go into Federal Congress, but ultimately it lies with the voters. We're going to leave it there for this afternoon. Solly Malatsi, who's a spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance, just giving us feedback on that executive meeting that was being held. But coming up,